The Interstellar Prosperity Coalition, or IPC, as it was known to species who couldn't be bothered with lengthy official titles, had spent the last 600 years perfecting the art of making the universe remarkably dull. Through a combination of advanced technology, aggressive diplomacy, and the kind of bureaucratic efficiency that would make any self-respecting anarchist weep, they had managed to eliminate approximately 97% of existential threats from civilized space. It was, objectively speaking, a triumph of cooperation over chaos. 312 species, spread across 42,000 inhabited systems, had collectively decided that violence was passé, scarcity was solvable, and death was more of a lifestyle choice than an inevitability. They had atmospheric processors that could terraform a planet in decades, medical technology that could regrow limbs like houseplants, energy sources so abundant that power scarcity was something children learned about in history modules alongside other prehistoric horrors like resource wars and unscheduled dental pain. The problem with universal prosperity, however, was that it made everyone catastrophically soft. The Krevax were a perfect example of this phenomenon. They had evolved on Krevar, a planet that could best be described as aggressively pleasant. Average temperature, 22 degrees. Atmospheric composition, so balanced it could have been used as a chemistry textbook example. Native predators, exactly 3 species, all of which were more interested in eating fruit than anything that might fight back. The planet's most dangerous weather pattern was what the Krevax called a storm, which by any reasonable standard was just enthusiastic drizzle with delusions of grandeur. Over millennia, the Krevax had evolved into tall, graceful beings with iridescent scales that shifted through colors based on their emotional state. They had 6 limbs, counting their 2 tails, and could manipulate objects with remarkable precision. They were excellent mathematicians, talented artists, and absolutely terrible at understanding danger. Which brought us to Commander Thexral, standing on the bridge of the acquisition vessel Silent Prophet, currently approaching what his crew had designated Target 77 Alpha, a human mining operation on an asteroid designated 2251 Pallas in the Sol Systems belt. Biological scan complete, announced Tactical Officer Shrenix, her scales rippling with satisfied purple hues. Target species confirmed as Homo sapiens. Classification, recently contacted. Technology level, Tier 4. Defensive capabilities, minimal. Projected resistance coefficient, 0.23. Thexral nodded, his scales shifting to confident gold. The Krevax had been in the resource acquisition business for 2 centuries now, ever since some enterprising economist had realized that while warfare was illegal, aggressively negotiated asset transfers occupied a legal gray area that the IPC's courts were still arguing about. The business model was elegant. Identify targets with valuable resources, apply sufficient intimidation to encourage cooperation, extract concessions, file the paperwork, and move on. It was like piracy, but with proper documentation and counseling services for anyone who experienced undue stress. Humans were perfect targets. The biological data was clear. They were fragile bipeds with no natural armor, no redundant organs, no environmental adaptations worth mentioning. They had only achieved faster-than-light travel 40 years ago, and were still figuring out which end of galactic politics was up. Their homeworld, Earth, was barely registered in the IPC's databases, beyond a cursory survey noting it as inhabitable, unremarkable, standard classification. "What's the crew complement?" Thexral asked, reviewing the tactical display showing the mining station clinging to the asteroid surface like a metallic barnacle. 37 humans, Shrenix replied. 12 on active shift, 25 in rest cycle. Station defenses consist of point defense lasers for asteroid debris and what appears to be a single outdated plasma cannon that probably hasn't been maintained since installation. Armament? Standard mining equipment. Plasma cutters, drilling lasers, explosive charges for excavation. Nothing designed for combat. Thexeral's scales rippled with satisfaction. The Silent Prophet had a crew of 45, all trained in intimidation protocols. They had pulse weapons that could stun at range, personal shields that could deflect most projectiles, and most importantly, they had experience. This would be their 43rd successful acquisition this cycle. Begin approach, Thexeral ordered. Standard breach protocols. Remember, we want them frightened but functional. Excessive trauma means excessive paperwork. The Silent Prophet glided toward the mining station with the predatory grace of something that had forgotten what actual predators looked like. Magnetic grapples locked onto the station's cargo bay section. Plasma torches began cutting through the outer hull with surgical precision, following safety guidelines that specified minimum structural damage and maximum dramatic effect. Thexeral led the boarding party through the breach. Pulse rifle held in his primary arms, while his secondary arms carried scanning equipment and restraint devices. Atmospheric smoke deployed automatically, because testing had shown that visible haze increased fear responses by 17% across most species. Holographic projections created menacing shadows. Audio emitters played deep, resonant tones calculated to trigger primal anxiety. They stormed into the cargo bay, expecting panic, submission, or at minimum, some acknowledgement that a hostile boarding action was taking place. Instead, they found a human woman sitting on a cargo container, eating what appeared to be some kind of wrapped food item and looking at them with the expression of someone whose entertainment stream had just been interrupted by a particularly boring advertisement. She was perhaps 1.6 meters tall, which made her laughably small compared to the Krivax's 2.4-meter average. She wore a practical jumpsuit covered in various pockets and tool loops, safety boots that had clearly seen extensive use, and her dark hair was gathered into a functional knot at the base of her skull. Her skin was a warm brown tone, and her eyes, as they tracked across the boarding party, showed no fear whatsoever. What they showed, primarily, was annoyance. "Oh, for the love of," she said around a mouthful of food, then swallowed deliberately. "Are you serious right now? Do you have any idea what time it is?" Thexeral felt his scales flicker with confused orange. This was not in any of the response scenarios they had trained for. He raised himself to his full impressive height, all 6 limbs spread in what psychological studies had proven was an intimidating posture. "Human, this facility is now under Krivax jurisdiction. You will comply with all directives or face consequences." The woman took another bite of her food. Chewed, swallowed. Jurisdiction, right. You got paperwork for that, or are we doing the whole informal hostile boarding thing? "We are authorized by—" "Yeah, I'm going to stop you there," the woman interrupted, holding up one hand while the other continued holding her food. "Because I'm on my lunch break. I've been awake for 16 hours dealing with a malfunctioning ore processor, and I really, genuinely do not have the energy for this right now." She paused. "What's your planet's gravity?" The question was so unexpected that Thexeral answered reflexively. 0.86 standard. "And let me guess," the woman continued. "Your atmosphere is maybe 74% nitrogen, 23% oxygen, nice, comfortable temperature range of 18 to 26 degrees? Maybe some seasonal variation, but nothing dramatic? Biggest predator on your planet is probably something herbivorous that occasionally gets cranky?" Thexeral's scales flickered rapidly through confused colors. "How could you possibly?" "Because you guys always come from paradise worlds. the woman said, sliding off the cargo container and landing on her feet with a grace that seemed somehow threatening despite her size. Let me guess the rest. Longest drought your planet experiences is maybe 3 months. Worst storms are just heavy rain and wind that knocks over some trees but doesn't level cities. Tectonic activity is minimal or non-existent. Natural radiation is filtered by a nice thick atmosphere and magnetic field. That is descriptive of Krivar, yes, admitted Shrenix from behind Thexral. But I fail to see. Of course you fail to see, the woman said. And now she was smiling. And Thexral realized with creeping unease that the smile was not friendly. Because you never had to. Let me educate you about Earth. My Earth. The planet that apparently nobody bothered researching before you decided we'd make good targets. She held up one finger. First, gravity. Earth is 1.0 standard, which means I've spent my entire life, every single day, moving around with 13% more weight than your bodies are designed to handle. You know what that does to bone density? Muscle development? Cardiovascular efficiency? It means when I'm standing here looking at you, I'm doing the equivalent of your heavy workout just by existing. One of the Krivax boarding party shifted uncomfortably. Thexral noticed it was Ven Kix, the newest member, whose scales were showing distinctly nervous yellow tones. Second, the woman continued, holding up another finger, atmosphere. Earth's atmosphere is 21% oxygen. You know what oxygen is? It's poison. Slow-acting, controlled poison. It oxidizes everything it touches. It makes metal rust. It makes organic matter decay. It literally ages us on a cellular level through oxidative stress. And we breathe it every single second because our planet's atmosphere is so chemically aggressive that we had to evolve to handle it. That cannot be medically viable. Shrenix protested weakly. Can't it? The woman's smile widened. Third point, temperature. Earth's temperature range is minus 89 degrees to plus 56 degrees Celsius. That's a 145-degree range. Your entire planet's seasonal variation is probably 8 degrees. We have deserts where the daytime heat can kill you in hours. We have Arctic regions where exposed skin freezes in minutes. And humans live in both. Voluntarily. She was warming to her subject now. And Thexral noticed with growing alarm that his boarding party was unconsciously retreating toward the hull breach. Fourth, radiation, the woman said. Earth's ozone layer is thin. We get bombarded with ultraviolet radiation constantly. You know what UV radiation does? It damages DNA, causes cancer, burns tissue. And we just accept it as part of being outside. We invented sunscreen and sunglasses and kept going to the beach. Fifth, she continued, apparently just getting started. Weather. Earth has hurricanes with wind speeds over 300 kilometers per hour. Tornadoes that can throw vehicles like toys. Thunderstorms that drop millions of liters of water and generate billions of volts of electricity. Blizzards that bury entire towns. Hailstones the size of your fist falling from the sky. And you know what humans do? We have entire government agencies dedicated to predicting them, so we can just work around them. Thexral tried to interrupt. Surely you're exaggerating. Am I? The woman pulled out a datapad. Let me show you Earth's geological activity. We have approximately 1,500 active volcanoes. Volcanic eruptions that can cause global climate changes. We have earthquakes along tectonic plate boundaries that can level cities. Tsunamis that can travel across entire oceans and hit coastlines with the force of multiple nuclear weapons. And humans just built earthquake-resistant structures and tsunami warning systems and kept building cities in the danger zones because the soil was fertile. She swiped through the datapad. Oh, here's a fun category. Earth's biodiversity. We have approximately 8.7 million species on our planet. Want to know how many of them can kill a human? Conservatively, several thousand. We've got snakes whose venom can drop you in under an hour, spiders whose bite causes necrosis and organ failure, jellyfish so toxic that their sting feels like being branded with hot iron and can cause cardiac arrest, fish that are literally made of poison, plants that cause pain so intense people have described it as worse than childbirth. That's impossible, Venkix whispered. No planet could sustain advanced life under those conditions. And yet, the woman said, spreading her arms, here I am. Let me tell you about Earth's microbiology. We have bacteria that eat flesh, viruses that liquefy organs, parasites that burrow into brains, fungi that colonize lungs, prions that fold proteins wrong and turn neural tissue into sponge. We have diseases with mortality rates over 90% that we only survived through sheer population numbers and evolutionary adaptation. She pulled up another file. Here's Earth's classification in the IPC database. Oh wait, you probably didn't check this part. Class 14 Death World. You know how many Class 14 worlds have produced spacefaring civilizations? 4 out of 312 IPC member species. We're one of 4. Thexeral felt his scales draining to pale, frightened white. Class 14 that's reserved for planets where complex life shouldn't be possible? The woman finished. Yeah. Earth's biosphere is so hostile that most xenobiologists who study it come away wondering how anything survived long enough to evolve. And you know what the answer is? Adaptation. Constant, relentless, brutal adaptation. Earth doesn't let weak things survive. It kills them, quickly. She took a step forward. The entire boarding party took a step back. Let me tell you about human development, she continued. Human children, from birth, are exposed to thousands of pathogens. Their immune systems spend years in active warfare against invasive organisms. We call it building immunity. It means human children exist in a state of low-level biological combat for their entire childhood, and we consider that normal, necessary, expected. We have an entire category of medicine called emergency medicine that exists because humans get injured so frequently that we needed specialists. We have trauma surgery. We have burn units. We have poison control centers. We invented antibiotics because bacterial infections were so common that they were a leading cause of death. We invented vaccines because viral diseases kept killing us in massive numbers. She pulled up an image on her datapad. This is a human bone. See how dense it is? That's because Earth's gravity means our skeletons need to support significant weight constantly. We have muscle attachment points that can handle forces that would tear your ligaments. We have cardiovascular systems that can operate under significant stress for extended periods. This, she showed another image, is a human scar. You know what a scar is? It's tissue that grew back after being damaged. Humans heal from cuts, burns, broken bones, torn muscles. We have regenerative capabilities that kick in automatically. You know why? Because getting injured on Earth was so common that we evolved to handle it. Thexeral's voice came out smaller than he intended. We thought you were fragile. You bleed from minor impacts. You lack protective shells or natural weapons. Yeah, we do, the woman agreed. You know why? Because we're not ambush predators or tank builds. We're pursuit predators, endurance hunters. Humans can run for hours, days even. We can maintain a jogging pace that would exhaust most species in 30 minutes for entire marathons. We have cooling systems so efficient we can operate in heat that would cause most species to collapse. We have throwing accuracy so precise we can hit moving targets from 50 meters away. We have visual processing that can track multiple threats simultaneously. We have pattern recognition that borders on precognition. And you know how we got all this? By hunting animals bigger, stronger, and faster than us until they literally died from exhaustion because they couldn't outlast us. She smiled again, and Thexeral's evolutionary instincts, buried under millennia of comfortable civilization, suddenly screamed warnings his conscious mind was struggling to process. "Let me tell you what humans do for fun," the woman said conversationally. "We jump out of perfectly functional aircraft and free fall for entertainment. We climb mountains that kill experienced climbers regularly because it's there. We dive into water so deep the pressure should crush us, with only mechanical assistance. We surf waves that can smash us into rocks. We ski down mountains at speeds that can cause fatal collisions. We have combat sports where we hit each other in the face repeatedly following agreed-upon rules. We run ultramarathons through deserts. We swim in open ocean despite the presence of large predators. We explore caves that haven't seen light in millions of years. We invented extreme sports because our regular sports weren't dangerous enough. We have an entire category of tourism called adventure tourism, where people pay money to put themselves in dangerous situations deliberately." She pulled up another file. "Here's human history. We've been having wars for approximately 10,000 years. Wars with sharpened sticks, then metal, blades, then projectile weapons, then explosive devices, then chemical weapons, then nuclear weapons capable of destroying our entire planet. And we're still here. We survived ice ages that lasted millennia. We survived volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun. We survived pandemic diseases that killed a third of our population. We survived each other," she added, which honestly was probably the hardest part. Shrenix made a small sound that might have been a whimper. "You're saying your species' greatest threat was yourselves?" "For a while, yeah," the woman admitted. "Humans are cooperative, but we're also competitive. Pack bonding instincts combined with territorial aggression. It's a fun combination. We eventually figured out that cooperation beat competition in the long run. But it took us a while." She gestured around the cargo bay. "You see this mining station? It's operating in an environment with no atmosphere, extreme temperature variations, constant micrometeorite impacts, and significant radiation exposure. And you know what? This is considered a safe assignment. Low risk. We have operations in worse conditions. We mine gas giants. We work on planets with crushing gravity. We build habitats and star systems with unstable stellar activity." "You want to know what I did last month?" the woman asked. "My crew and I responded to an emergency beacon from a survey ship that crashed on a planet with 1.4 gravity and atmospheric pressure 3 times Earth standard. We spent 6 days in environment suits, pulling survivors out of a damaged hull while local wildlife tried to eat us and volcanic vents kept opening up nearby. And we consider that part of the job." Thexeral felt his pulse pounding in his neck. His scales had gone completely white, the Krivak's equivalent of pure terror. What are you?" "Human," the woman said simply. "Average human. I'm not military, I'm not special forces. I'm not even particularly athletic by human standards. I'm a mining engineer. My most strenuous regular activity is playing amateur soccer on weekends and occasionally hiking. And yet, in the time you've been standing here trying to intimidate me, I've counted approximately 12 ways I could incapacitate your entire boarding party with equipment in this cargo bay." She pointed casually. "See that plasma cutter? It operates at 5,000 degrees. Your scales are thermally sensitive because you never needed heat resistance. That hydraulic press is rated for 15 tons. Your exoskeleton is strong for your gravity, but not for mine. Those explosive charges are mining grade, but they'd work fine in a confined space. The emergency bulkhead controls are on any wall panel, and I can vent this bay to vacuum in 4 seconds. Your suits would protect you, but the panic would neutralize most of your combat effectiveness. But here's what I'm actually going to do, she continued, her voice softening slightly. I'm going to finish my lunch. You're going to take your crew back through that hole you cut in my station's hull, because you will seal that properly before you leave, and we do have repair kits. Then, you're going to go back to your ship and update your targeting database. Do not engage human facilities. And if we refuse? Thexral asked, though every fiber of his being was screaming at him to run. Then I press this, the woman said, holding up a small device. It's the general alarm. It alerts all 37 crew members that we have hostile boarders. You've met me. I'm on my lunch break and I'm tired. You know what 37 humans look like when you interrupt their work cycle with hostile action? She paused for effect. Actually, no, you don't. And I really recommend you never find out. Because here's the thing about humans from Death Worlds. We're friendly and cooperative and generous when you treat us with respect. But we have survival instincts honed by millions of years of everything on our planet trying to kill us. When we perceive a threat, we don't freeze, we don't flee, we eliminate the threat. How? Benkix asked in a very small voice. Efficiently, the woman said. We're very good at it. We've had a lot of practice. There was a long moment of silence. The atmospheric smoke had dissipated. The holographic projections had shut off automatically. The audio emitters had stopped their threatening tones. In the absence of all the theatrical intimidation, the boarding party stood in a cargo bay, facing a single human who had just casually dismantled their entire operation without raising her voice or making a single threatening move. Thexral made what was possibly the smartest decision of his career. Boarding party, return to the Silent Prophet. This acquisition is cancelled. Permanently. His crew scrambled through the hull breach with speed that would have been embarrassing if Thexral hadn't been right behind them. They sealed the breach with emergency foam that was technically adequate, if not pretty. The Silent Prophet disengaged and put distance between themselves and the mining station with what could only be described as undignified haste. Back on the bridge, Thexral sat in his command chair and tried to process what had just happened. His scales were slowly returning to normal colors, though they kept flickering through anxious yellows. Commander, Shrenik said quietly, should we report this to IPC authorities? Yes, Thexral said. Every word, every data file she showed us, every terrifying detail. The Prosperity Coalition won't believe it. Then they'll learn the same way we did. Over the following weeks, Thexral's report made its way through bureaucratic channels, was flagged by multiple departments, analyzed by xenobiology specialists, and eventually presented to the IPC's Security Council. The reaction was mixed. This is clearly an exaggeration, insisted Councillor Murthax, a Silthene whose crystalline physiology made him perpetually skeptical of organic extremes. No carbon-based species could function under such conditions. The data is verified, countered Councillor Yindra, a Morphax who had actually bothered to read Earth survey data. Class 14 classification is accurate. I've cross-referenced with xenobiology databases. Everything the human claimed is documented. Impossible, Murthax said. We have established trade agreements with humanity. They seem perfectly reasonable. They are reasonable, Yindra said. That's the concerning part. They evolved empathy, cooperation, and diplomacy while simultaneously being one of the most resilient predator species in known space. They form emotional attachments to other species' predators and keep them as companions. They domesticated wolves, apex pack hunters, and then bred them into hundreds of variations for different purposes. The council chamber fell silent. "What do you recommend?" asked the security chair. "Reclassify humans as a protected species," Yindra said. "Not because they need protection, because everyone else needs protection from the diplomatic incident that would occur if anyone seriously threatens them. Add them to the non-aggression priority list. Make it very clear that targeting human facilities or personnel carries severe consequences." "You're suggesting we're afraid of them?" Merithax's crystalline structure chimed with indignation. "I'm suggesting we're smart enough not to threaten a species that evolved by outlasting everything their planet threw at them," Yindra corrected. "They're not aggressive by nature. They're actually quite friendly. But their definition of acceptable risk and appropriate response is calibrated to surviving on a planet that actively tries to kill complex life. We do not want to find out what they consider justified retaliation." Back on mining station 2251 Palace, engineer Jenna Kovac finished her lunch, filed an incident report that took approximately 5 minutes, and returned to work. The hull breach was repaired by end of shift. She mentioned the encounter to her supervisor. "Pirates again?" her supervisor asked. "Krivax this time. Nice enough people once you explain things." "How many is that this quarter?" 6. I'm thinking of submitting a proposal for standardized warning broadcasts. Would save everyone time." "Do it. Include it in your quarterly review." Jenna nodded and went back to calibrating the ore processor that had been malfunctioning. The incident had taken maybe 25 minutes total. Not even worth mentioning in her personal log. Her colleague, working nearby, glanced over. "You give them the Earth speech?" "Gave them the Earth speech. They left pretty fast." "We should really record it. Play it automatically when ships approach with questionable intent." "Already suggested it," Jenna said, adjusting a pressure valve. "Waiting on approval from corporate." "What do you think they'll call it?" "Probably something boring. Standard Deterrence Protocol or Educational Briefing 7. You know how corporate is about naming things." Her colleague laughed. "Better than why you really don't want to mess with Deathworlders." That would at least be honest. The mining station continued its operations. Ore was extracted, processed, and shipped. Shift rotations continued. The crew played cards, watched entertainment streams, exercised in the station's gym, and went about their lives in what they considered a completely normal fashion. The universe kept spinning. The IPC updated its databases. The Krivax updated their targeting protocols. And throughout civilized space, a quiet understanding began to spread. Humans were friendly, cooperative, excellent trading partners, and surprisingly good at diplomacy. They were also the last species you wanted to choose as victims, because their planet had spent millions of years trying to kill them and had failed spectacularly. Somewhere in the IPC's vast archives, a small addendum was added to humanity's species file. Deathworld survivors, non-aggression priority, exercise caution in all interactions. Do not threaten, do not test, do not attempt intimidation. They find it annoying, and you will regret it. The universe, in its infinite complexity and questionable sense of humor, had created a galactic civilization so safe and comfortable that its members had forgotten what danger looked like. And then, just for variety, it had introduced them to a species that still remembered. Humanity didn't conquer the galaxy. They didn't need to. They showed up cooperated enthusiastically, contributed to galactic society, and occasionally reminded everyone that soft and friendly wasn't the same as weak and harmless. The Kree-Vax updated their business model. The IPC updated its security protocols. And engineer Jenna Kovac went to the station's gym after her shift because habits formed on Class 14. Death worlds don't fade just because you're living in space. Some species were forged in paradise and learned to thrive through cooperation. Others were forged in hell and learned to thrive through adaptation. Both had their place in galactic civilization. It just turned out that one of those species had significantly higher baseline capabilities than anyone had expected, and a tendency to casually mention terrifying facts about their homeworld as if they were discussing weather patterns. The universe continued its slow rotation. Stars burned, civilizations prospered, and the fundamental lesson remained. Before choosing a victim, make sure they actually are one. Otherwise, you might find yourself receiving an educational lecture about death world biology from someone who considers surviving just another Tuesday. And really, that was a lesson worth learning the easy way.